My very first rental property did not go to plan. However, it sparked me in real estate investing and helped me get to my $50 million worth of real estate I bought without using any of my own money. So in this video, I want to go over my very first deal, explain how it went down, all the twists and the turns, and then I'm gonna give you my top 3 lessons learned doing my very first deal. And I still own the property today, and I'm gonna tell you how much it's gone up in value since buying it. All right, so it was 2014, and I was wanting to invest in real estate, specifically buy rental properties. However, I did not have enough money to buy rental properties, and I did not know about the BRRRR method and the things I'm going to talk about in this video. All I knew was I needed 20% down to buy a rental property, but I didn't have that 20%. So my goal was to flip a property, take that profit, hopefully that profit would be enough to put 20% down on a rental property. So technically I had to buy 2 properties to just get 1 rental property, which was pretty much all I knew. I did know you could borrow money from people to do a flip, but I had no idea the power of borrowing people's money to buy rental properties. Me and my business partner, Lucas, started to look for properties on Zillow. His mother-in-law was a real estate agent, so we had looked at properties with her. And in total, we looked at about 50 properties before we were able to get our very first one. While we were doing that, I nailed down a private money lender who was going to give us $100,000 to buy and repair a property. So now we knew the guardrails we had to stay in. We had to stay under $100,000 for the purchase plus the rehab. Back then, it wasn't near as hard as it is today to get in that price point, but we had to do it because we didn't have any money. I probably had $3 grand in my checking and savings account, and Lucas probably had similar. So now we had this $100,000 guidance limit that took me about 6 months to get and find the right private lender, and we were out there looking for deals. We ended up finally getting a bank-owned property under contract for $77,000. However, it needed about $40,000 worth of work. Considering we did not have $117,000 that was needed to do this deal, we had to roll up our sleeves and do a ton of the work ourselves. I remember going to the property almost every single weekend and working 20 hours. Luke and I would meet there on Saturday and Sunday mornings at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and we would do everything that we could do. Everything from demo to painting to try to put in simple flooring to landscaping. We just did everything that we could to try to save some money. As we were doing the rehab, we connected with our local community, like I tell every single person to do on here. We went to our local meetups and met some local real estate investors. One of them's name was Brian, and we went to his office and we told him our plan. He loved the plan because he owned 150 single-family rental properties himself. We told him what we were doing, we told him the numbers, and he said, why don't you just do a cash-out refinance and keep that property as a rental rather than sell it? That one conversation completely shifted our mindset and planted a seed that would lead to over $50 million worth of real estate without using any of our own money. You see, I didn't know that you could go to a local bank and do a cash out refinance, pull out up to 80% of a property's value. And if you had a loan on that property to get it fixed up in rehab, you could use that cash out refinance money and pay back who you borrowed the money from, plus interest. So that's what we did. About halfway through the rehab, we decided to keep this property as a rental property. So the time came to where we were ready to try to execute the refinance. And if it didn't work out, we would probably just sell it and everything would be okay, but we wanted to keep it as a rental. So I remember calling Bank of America and Commerce Bank and having very confusing conversations with the people at the bank because they had no idea what I was talking about. We called over 22 banks and all of them said no because we were calling the wrong banks. Again, we didn't know anything. This tends to be our theme in business is go, go, go. We'll figure out the details later, and that's done pretty well for the most part for us. So we started out that exact same way. Eventually, we got a hold of a small local bank that did cash out refinances. They scheduled a third-party appraiser to come out in 2 weeks. So we had 2 weeks to finish up the project. So we were scrambling and trying to get everything done and doing a lot of the work ourselves. We ended up hiring out some things, and crazy enough, we came in at about $99,000 of the private lender's money used. So technically we had about $1,000 fluff, but the project was done. The appraiser came out and appraised the property for $125,000, and we got an 80% loan on the $125,000, which 80% of 125 is $100,000. So we had enough plus a couple $100 extra to pay back our private money lender. However, he didn't just give us the money to get his money back. He wanted to make an 8% return on his money. So we owed him about $104,000 or $105,000. And if you were paying attention earlier, we didn't have that money. Fortunately for us, we have a great relationship with this private lender and still do to this day. And while we were doing the project and while we made connections at those local meetups, we ended up getting a hold of a few local wholesalers, and we had another property under contract that we were looking at. We looked at the numbers with our private lender, and he saw that it was an absolute home run. We were able to get the property purchased for $45,000, and it needed about $5,000 worth of work, and it was worth $85,000 to $90,000. So we talked to the private lender, showed him the numbers, and he ended up funding that second deal as well, with the one caveat that we would use the money from that second deal to pay back the second deal plus the first deal extra interest that we owed him at 12% instead of 8%. All very, very fair to us. I think the biggest thing here is we were able to get him his principal back, so he wasn't out any money. Looking back, I think that was a big part of this. Had we not given him his entire principal back, I do not think he would have been as flexible as needed on that extra interest earned. It's one of the beautiful things about dealing with private lenders. You're able to bob and weave and do things that you can't do with other lenders because there's that relationship built. So during this process, we got the property rented for $1,250, and that cash flowed, even at a horrible loan, about $250 a month. That original loan we got on this property was 6.5% over 20 years, which is not very good terms, but that's was what we were given because we were brand new investors. However, the thing still cash flowed. One big obstacle that almost sunk the deal was the occupancy inspection. This property was in Maryland Heights, Missouri, and the occupancy inspector at the time was very, very anal about everything that needed to be done. I remember specifically it was November of 2014. We got the project done and we got a tenant approved to move in. They were getting ready to move in on a Monday. It was Friday morning. I had to take off work to meet the inspector at the property for the second time because the inspector came the week before and failed us on probably 30 different items. So we were scrambling, trying to get everything up to code, put some fireproofing where there needed to be fireproofing, ground the outlets that needed to be grounded, and just doing little knick-knack things to make the property livable for the tenant. As the inspector was pulling up, I was finishing up the final little items. He came in, I missed a couple things, but fortunately for us, he let us pass if I sent him pictures of the completed items later that day. So catastrophe avoided, we passed, so we were able to move in the tenant. Now the beautiful thing about this property is we've only had 3 tenants over the past 11 years. So this property has legitimately cash flowed a couple $100 every single month for the past couple years. But that's not even the coolest part. The coolest part is this property originally had a $100,000 mortgage on it from the bank, the cash out refinance, and $125,000 value. So there's $25,000 worth of equity in this property. Well, guess what? Real estate does what real estate do over the past 11 years. And that $125,000 property is now worth $270,000. And that $100,000 mortgage is paid down to $60,000. So I have $210,000, the 270 minus the 60, $210,000 of equity in one rental property I bought without using any of my own money. And if you didn't know, that's about the average 401k at the age of retirement and is more than the average IRA at the age of retirement. All in 11 years, all without using any of my own money. I didn't have to contribute to it like you do a 401k or contribute to it like you do an IRA, and I could have sold it or taken money from it whenever I wanted. There's no rules and regulations like there are with 401ks and IRAs. So it's a beautifully powerful thing, not to even mention the property gives me tax benefits that I can then filtrate down to my personal taxes. So it's a win-win-win-win if you know how to properly leverage other people's money to buy real estate the right way. Looking back, the deal went pretty smoothly, but it doesn't feel like that when you're in in the midst of not knowing what the appraisal is going to be, getting told no by banks, not being able to pay your private lender their money back plus interest. But again, relationships were built and I was able to see the agility and flexibility of real estate if you do things the right way and have resources at your fingertips. And we were just scratching the surface of the relationships we were going to build. The top 3 lessons learned doing this deal that I think are absolutely invaluable are: number 1, leverage. Understanding how to put in minimal effort to get maximum results, or use a little bit or none of your own money to actually own an asset, absolutely blew my mind. I knew you could leverage real estate thinking I will put 20% down, the bank will finance 80%, so that 80% is technically leveraged because the bank is taking on that mortgage and I'm using the tenant's rent to pay the bank back. I knew that, but I did not know about the 20%. I thought it had to be cash. I didn't know if you leverage other people's money to purchase a distressed property and brought a deal to a bank with equity, you could potentially, if you run your numbers right, pay back whoever you borrowed the money from, and you brought the 20% to the bank through equity, not cash. Number 2, relationships. The relationships that I built with the bank that I still use to this day and funds a ton of my businesses, the relationships that I had and built with the private money lender and leaned on when things got a little bit narrow on the returns, were everything. This is a relationship business. I mean, pretty much any business is a relationship business, but real estate specifically, if you're able to build relationships along the journey of buying, rehabbing, and owning rental properties, you will always have somebody's shoulder you can tap on and ask a favor, or somebody's shoulder you can tap on to get advice. And finally, number 3, the biggest thing that I learned from this was the confidence that is needed to step on the gas. I had no idea what I was doing. Lucas and I were flying by the seat of our pants, yet we did a perfect BRRRR's deal without even knowing what the BRRRR's method was. That gave us extreme confidence to know that if we dug in, connected with the community, learned more, and did more deals, and learned along the way that the sky was the limit. And that has led to $50 million worth of real estate that I've legitimately bought using none of my own money. If you want to learn from somebody who recently did it and is currently doing it, there's no better place than this channel. So make sure you like this video, hit the subscribe button. I go live on here and give as much free content as I can. I appreciate you for being here. Make sure to check out this video over here to learn more about investing in real estate as a new real estate investor, and I will see you on the next one.